think it's interesting to note that in science there are what they call the kingdoms of life. And they call the kingdoms of life 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, depending upon who you talk to, but I tend to think of it being as like 4 or 5. And the kingdoms are basically animals, and the plants, and then the bacteria, and that can be divided into 2, called the monista and the protista and the monera. And then there's the 5th kingdom, which is the fungi I call them. And this is a whole other form of life that's not animal, and it's not vegetable, and it's not bacterial. And I want to say that I feel that we often tend to think of the kingdoms of life hierarchically. So we tend to think that the bacteria and the fungi and the molds and all those things that are down at the bottom, they're the little ones, they're the ones that are breaking everything down. They don't have any smarts, it's us. We got the animals, we've got big brains, we're human beings, we build infrastructure, and we rule the world because we're the smartest beings on the planet. And I want to juxtapose that and just put that little seed into your minds and say, what if it's the whole other way around? Or what if it's partly the other way around? Because my understanding is that bacteria and fungi rule the world. They are the foundation of all life, and they have a powerful and profound intelligence about which we don't have a clue. And we're just starting to realize that maybe there's something going on with these things and we should study them more. There's been this microbiome project, I don't know if you heard about that, but they're starting to say that there's 10 times more bacteria in our human bodies than there is human cells in our human bodies, that we're really just a shell for bacteria. And these things are performing functions that we don't have a clue about. They're on our skin, they're in our mouths, they're in our genital urino tract, they're in our guts, they form a vast part of our immune system, and they have an intelligence. I'm here to tell you that people are going to start to realize in the coming decades that bacteria and fungi and these microorganisms that we just kind of walk over and try to kill by all this, you go into wherever you go in the grocery store and it's like, there's your sanitizer to kill, kill, kill. We're trying to kill these things and we're never going to be able to kill them because they're here for a reason. They were here way before us and they will be here way after we're gone, and they have a purpose in this world and an intelligence. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about the fact that this whole study of mycology is really, in some respects, terra incognita. They say that there are perhaps, and I don't know how they extrapolate this, over 1 million, maybe 1.5 million, there's different numbers that you hear, species of fungi in the world, on the planet. And perhaps we have found out about maybe 5% of those, a few tens of thousands. We don't even know what's out there. So this is a very unexplored field, and there's not a lot of data yet, scientifically. And yet, we find that human beings have been using fungi for thousands and thousands of years. There's a lot of documented evidence of this in China, in the Medica Materia, the Chinese Medica Materia, and there's fantastic information there. Although we don't speak Chinese, you can find translations and realize that these things have been used for thousands of years by human beings, and people have known all along, without reductionist science, without knowing these active components and the scientific names and all the chemistry and all that, people have known that these things are valuable to human health. So one of the things that I really kind of like to explore a little bit, and probably this has gone on in other workshops, but I still want to talk about it here because I think it's so important, is to really kind of delve into the mycelium. What is mycelium? So just in case there's people, I know there's a lot of really knowledgeable people here, but there's also people who maybe don't know as much, so I'm kind of going to start with the foundation as far as I understand and kind of go from there. So the mycelium is this organism. It's a fungal organism that probably we're all standing on, that lives beneath the forest floor in a lot, if not all, forest ecosystems. So it's underneath the surface of the soil, and it's made out of what are called hypha, and these are just tiny little filaments that weave and grow and interweave to make a mat, and it's a network of filaments that form this organism that's called the mycelium. So evidently, mycelium, there is a mycelium or more than one, and the one I'm thinking of is in Oregon State, that is the largest living thing on the planet, so they say. It lives, you know, for acres and acres and miles underneath the forest, and you can see it from wherever, some kind of infrared camera. I don't know how they detect it. But Paul Stamets talked about this. Paul Stamets is a very well-known mycologist out of Olympia, Washington, and he has a company called Fungi Perfecti. I have his little catalog here. He also wrote this book here, Medicinals. He's a super knowledgeable guy, and he's written a book called Mycelium Running, which has some really fantastic information about mycelium. So the mycelium lives underneath the forest floor, and it serves this amazing function. It's really a vital component to the whole ecosystem. It's living in the darkness, under the ground. It's holding moisture, and I think one of the most amazing things about it is that they've studied this, and they found that the mycelium is a transfer of nutrients. So, for instance, if there's a pocket of minerals or some other kind of nutrients over in this one part of the forest, and the mycelium, because they're under the ground interfacing with the roots of the trees and interfacing with the roots of all the plants and the shrubs and the herbs in the forest, they can sense when there's a need for a particular nutrient. And they have the capacity, the mycelium has the capacity to convey minerals and nutrients from one part of the forest through its network of hyphae to another part of the forest where it's needed. So there's a sentience about it, which I think is just really quite remarkable.